talk now. This MMA, what we talking about? Yeah, you tuned into the pod now. Gonna be hard for you to stop now. Yeah, we caged in. Yeah, we caged in. Yeah, we caged in.
Welcome back to another episode of Caged In. I'm your host, Chris DiCarlo. Today we got a very special guest joining the show on a very special episode of the show. It's our first ever in-person interview, and there's nobody better to do this one with than my guy, Joe Giannetti. How are we doing today, my man?
I'm doing good. Just finished my early morning workout. Gonna go eat soon and rest up and then get back to it later, but I'm feeling good.
Perfect, man. I know you got a big one coming up in January. It's been a while since we talked. I think the last time we linked up was before the Do For It fight, so we got a little catching up to do. But first of all, man, not only tell the people where we're at. I know we're at your little home gym here, Giannetti Martial Arts, aka the Hyperbolic Time Chamber.
Yes, sir.
Give us a little bit of breakdown on the spot, man. It must be pretty cool to have a spot that you can kind of call your own.
Yeah, for sure. This has always been a dream of mine, have a gym, and this is the closest thing until I have a commercial gym. And honestly, it all kind of started during COVID. As soon, the second that I was at work and my dad was like, "Hey, we're out of work for the next 2 weeks," I was like, "Okay, that's weird." And then my coach at my old gym was like, "I don't know if we'll be able to stay open." I was like, "All right, I'm on eBay, I'm on Amazon," and I started ordering stuff. And I cleaned out our garage and built this from the ground up. First it was some cheap mats I got on eBay, and then it was a treadmill that I got on Facebook and a little bench setup. And then just over COVID, just kept building and building. And now we're here through the help of, sponsors and friends and family. It's been awesome. And I'm able to make a living out of here doing private lessons and prepare for my fights. And it's just a really cool thing that, I was able to build with my support unit.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's definitely a cool spot. Definitely good. I can get a couple of the guys in here, get some rolls in on the mats. You got the weights in the back. Definitely a cool spot to have, especially like you said, during COVID, that was a mess for everybody. Even like myself, who I don't train, but just going to the gym every day, I couldn't do that. So then you try to find weights online, and price per pound is crazy. You know what I mean? So it is cool that now you kind of got this full spot built, and whenever you need to kind of get a quick workout, and you kind of just come right in here. It's pretty dope.
Yeah, for sure. I got lucky. There was actually, when I got my treadmill and my old bench set up, the lady that we picked it up from, she was like, "My husband's had this for years. He never uses it. Take it all." I was just coming to buy the treadmill in the bar, and she starts throwing weights in my truck. I was like, "All right, keep throwing them in."
Hell yeah. Especially that time, man. Those things were gold at that
point.
Oh,
my God.
Plates were gold bars. Let's talk about it, man. Cage Titan 63, you're going in there versus Sean Lally. Like I said, before we touch on that one, let's kind of catch up a little bit. Cage Titan 61, defend your lightweight title against Michael Dufort. Unfortunately, that one doesn't go your way. Immediate reaction after that fight. How was the feelings? What was it like, backstage and everything? Just that immediate reaction.
Immediately, it was kind of just disappointment in myself, I've told plenty of people since then, kind of just got caught lacking. It's one of those things where I wasn't focused, past Dufort. I wasn't, everybody, and I said this on Fight Week, everybody was like, after this, the UFC, after this, the UFC. And I was like, I don't give a shit until the job is done. Then we can talk UFC or whatever. But I did feel like I wasn't 100% locked in. And then to feel almost like all the sacrifice and hard work that I had made had brought me back to where I started. This isn't my first time almost being in the UFC and then losing. We had the Ultimate Fighter finale. People were saying it my first fight out of the UFC. People were saying it before I lost to Dewan Owens. And then, back here again, and then LFA, and the same thing. So it's kind of felt like I repeated the cycle, and it almost felt like I wasted my time in these past few years. And that was heartbreaking. I made plenty of sacrifices. I've lost friends. I've lost money. I've been in debt. I'm still in debt. And then to just be there again, and it was all but guaranteed, and then it was gone in a minute, in 60 seconds. Right. It was crushing. The few weeks following is probably one of the lowest lows I've ever hit in this sport and in life. I was in a bad way. But I know that the only person that's going to pull me out of that is me. Everybody around me, I love them all. Everybody's trying to get in touch with me. Everybody's trying to come over. I had people showing up at my apartment, and I just wasn't answering the door. Right. I wasn't answering my coach's phone calls. I was sleeping on my couch because I wasn't sleeping at night. I was just I'm going to go be on the couch and watch TV. But I knew that I would be the only person to pull me out of that. And everybody tried. And after, I thought it'd only take a week. It took about 2 weeks, but I did. I woke up one day and was like, all right, enough of the pity party. Only one that's going to get me out of this is me, and that's if I get back to work. And I did immediately. I was back in the gym, and I just told everybody, I was like, we are going to train harder than we have ever fucking trained for the foreseeable future. And that's what we've been doing.
Hell yeah, man. And once that dust kind of settled, maybe however long it took, looking back on that fight with a clear mind and just like a clear headspace, how do you look back on that fight now, and what have you learned from it?
I just got to go out there and be me, I don't think it's a matter of like me respecting him too much because, I respect all my opponents to a point. It's the sport. You can lose to anybody. But it's definitely one of those things where I feel like my support system at times, and I've talked to them about this, whether it's my friends, my family, or my teammates, almost care a little too much and almost are a little too cautious and worried to where it dims my shine because now I'm not fighting as me. I'm fighting, obviously you have to follow a game plan, but it gets to the point where it's like you're fighting as someone that's not you. And I feel like even in my recent wins, I've been fighting the easiest way to win, the winning path, but I'm not fighting like me. The most recent fight where I feel like I was just out there doing my thing was the short notice Pat Casey fight. I kind of just had that fuck it mentality. I was like, let's just throw something. And it paid off. But honestly, like that's my fighting style. I have a weird style and I'm creative. The cage is my canvas and I'm the painter. I'm just going out there to paint. And I feel like I showed up that night with a box of crayons and I'm here to do painting. So, I'm kind of back to like, I appreciate the input. I love everybody, but I'm going to go do me. And that's inside and outside the cage. There's plenty of times where I feel like I'm a little too soft-spoken, where I feel strongly on an opinion, whether it's fighting or in my life, because I don't want to offend anybody and I don't want to do this. And, I still don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to feel what I'm going to feel. You know what I mean? And if I feel like, oh, that guy sucks, I shouldn't even be fighting him. Yeah, that guy sucks, I shouldn't even be fighting him. And that's, I'm not saying it to piss somebody off or disrespect somebody, but that's how I truly feel. And when I say I deserve to be in the UFC and I'm going to fight and beat so-and-so, I mean it. My recent losses don't change my feelings on that. And I said this to somebody after that loss, was like, if that one loss defines me as a fighter, what about the 6 wins I've had within my last 7? I think that outnumbers it tenfold. So, I mean, that's just a matter of that. Wins and losses don't define me as a person or a fighter anymore. And it kind of just like set me free.
For sure, man. I know your main objective now is to, get that Cage Titans lightweight strap back at 155. Any word on Dufort's availability? I know he was kind of hoping to win that one versus you and then kind of get that ticket to the UFC. Cards seem to be filling up, especially the ones that he was trying to get on. Any word on his availability to defend that belt sometime this year, or is it still kind of in limbo?
All I know of is that him and his team are really focused on the UFC right now. I haven't got a definitive word of yes or no as far as me and him running it back. But like I will say, and I said it the day after the fight or whenever I posted, he deserves it. Maybe I should have sat around and waited for UFC Boston. That's just not who I am. But I've sat through 2 UFC Bostons, and I've been in fight camp during those UFC Bostons, and I didn't get the call. But whatever, he's on a win streak, and I said that he deserves to sit out and wait for it if he wants to. Obviously, he does. If they call him, cool, I'll see him in UFC one day. If they don't, me and him are the only lightweight fight that makes sense at Cage Titans. Nobody at 155 pounds will fight me, and he smoked me. So I know that nobody at 155 pounds will fight him.
Right.
And even 170's a little dry now, and I'm not focused on 170, This is kind of just like a time killer, another way to test myself, and I think that is the fight to make, whether it be the next Cage Titans after this one or the one after that.
For sure. And especially if you're having a hard time getting a fight at 155 locally, 170 just seems like that kind of division that you can kind of jump into and to stay active and stay ready rather than just like kind of sitting around and waiting. So let's talk about the last one then, Cage Titans 62. Originally supposed to be Jack Congdon versus Pat Casey for the welterweight title that you relinquished. Unfortunately, Jack gets hurt and they need a fill-in, and they call you. When did the phone call come for you, and then what was your immediate reaction there?
So I had texted Cage Titans 2-3 weeks before that, and I had said, if anybody can't make it to fight night, let me know. Like, I'll think about it. I was thinking more of like somebody at 55, so I was training really hard to be in a place to make 55. As we got closer to the card, I was like, all right, nobody's going to get hurt. Nobody, you know what I mean? So I was eating more, not like junk food, but just like bigger servings. Sure. And I was like, I'm going to get back to lifting heavy. And I was focused on just like improving and being in good shape. And we were training so hard. We still are, but we were training so hard since that last loss that I was in great shape. I had some jiu-jitsu tournaments coming up, and Cage Titans texted me one day and, Jack Congdon's out. And I was like, what do you need? And I was like, what are you asking? And they were like, I'm not asking anything. I'm just letting you know somebody isn't going to make it. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. Here's my price. Let's get it done. And he was like, all right, let me turn around. And, Pat Casey, he was like, I'll take it.
Of course.
He's a gamer. And so he took the fight. That was like 10 days out. And I called my coaches, and I was like, hey, I'm fighting Pat Casey. And they were like, when? I was like, in 10 days. And they were like, you coming to the gym tonight? I was like, hell yeah. And we got in the gym, and we were just grinding. And You know, it gave me just that sense of confidence that we were already working so hard, but then everybody heard like, oh, he's got to fight. Let's turn it up even more. And they beat the shit out of me for 10 days.
Yeah, there you go, man. Got to get that. Got to get ready, especially versus a dog like Pat Casey. Like you said, he's a gamer. I'm sure he had no hesitations in accepting that fight.
It was quick. He said, yeah, real fast.
I'm sure he did. He's that kind of guy. Looking at the opponent, Pat Casey, going into that fight, obviously you only had 10 days to prepare. What do you think about the matchup for you going into it, and then overall, what was the game plan kind of going in?
Honestly, I was excited about it because he reminded me of a bigger Dufort. You know, I don't think that either of them, even now in hindsight after losing to Dufort, I don't think either of them, you know, match up with me well on the feet. But I know Pat is a strong, durable wrestler, you know, obviously as Dufort is too. And I said this before and after the Dufort fight, that you let him fight his fight, it's going to be a bad night. And I felt the same way about Pat Casey. And I told myself and my team, I was like, if I can beat this guy, I can beat Dufort. You know, whether Dufort's better than Casey or not, Casey is bigger and stronger. So I know that if I can hang in there with him, then I can hang in there with Dufort. So we kind of just went out there and we were wrestling for 10 days. I didn't put on a pair of gloves. No MMA, no bag work, no mitt work. I was just wrestling. I did get some New England Cartel work in. We did some sparring, but at BTT Taunton, we were just wrestling. And honestly, the game plan was very similar to Dufort. He's going to run out. He's going to try and take me down. I got to choke him out or stay on my feet and just pick him apart. Luckily for me, we got into a kickboxing fight, and I was just kind of in my flow state and was able to just do what I do.
For sure, man. Let's talk about the finish then. Jumping head kick KO is what they're calling it. Live, couldn't really tell if it was a knee or it was a kick. Whatever it was a highlight reel at the end of the day. You know, watching the fight, you can kind of see yourself kind of setting that strike up. Can you kind of talk about, you know, the setup to that finish and then obviously the fight ending sequence there?
Yeah, for sure. It was just one of those things that it's always in my head with my style, you know, that opening will eventually be there in every fight. And, you know, if you've been sparring with me for years, you've yelled at me to throw that in a fight. Right. I have so many more things that I don't throw in my fights that my teammates are like, dude, throw this in a fight, you're going to knock someone out. Or like, hit this in a fight, they will tap. And I'm just like, I work everything to this point where I'm like, I can hit this on anybody in the world. Then I start using it in my fights. Maybe it's, you know, a little delayed and I should be using them sooner, but that's the level of confidence I want before I throw it. And I started putting that lead leg kick out there, and I was setting it up, and I was like, all right, let's see if he opens up for it. And he kept dipping to try and catch it, you know, as a wrestler would. And then after a while, I was like, all right, I think I think now I got it, because he was really kind of pressing me. And as soon as I got him to reset, I was like, I'm just going to throw it out there and see if it works. And as I'm thinking that, one of my coaches, Justin Burrell, was like, switch kick. I don't think he meant jumping switch kick, but he meant switch kick. Because that's something me and him work on a lot too with my style. And so, you know, I put that lead leg kick out there, and then I jumped and I switched to the rear, and it landed. And in hindsight, I know it landed perfect because I didn't even feel it. Like people always say, like, it's like when you hit a home run and the ball just bounces off the bat. Yeah. So it landed, and I was like, oh, cool, that landed. And then as my foot came down, I saw him falling in slow motion. I was like, oh, it worked. And then I just kind of jumped on him. And I was like, I don't want to say in disbelief, but like, it just was so perfect. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, man. It's just one of those things that when it lands, it's like, holy shit.
I was lost. He fell and it was in slow motion. And I was like, oh, it worked.
Yeah, man. And that's kind of like the way you ended your 2023 going out with a highlight reel like that. You know, obviously nominated for Knockout of the Year and the Cage Titans End of the Year awards. 2023, man, looking back on it, you finished the year 2-1. You lose one belt, regain another one that was yours previously. Summarize 2023 for me. How would you kind of describe your 2023?
It's definitely not my best year in the sport, but I still think that I stick out among the rest. As far as locally, you know, and that's not a knock on anybody else, but I'm just doing things that these other guys are too afraid to do. You know, I'm fighting in other weight classes. I'm trying to fight on every card. Of course. You know, I'm not saying no to anybody. And, you know, all these guys are trying to throw their name in the hat for like next in the UFC or the biggest, baddest dude around. It's like, if you need a perfect scenario to get a win, then you're doing the wrong thing. And I kind of feel like that was where my eyes opened up after the Dufort fight when I got texted about Pat Casey. It's like, you know, the world's going to keep on turning. Fights are going to happen with or without me. It's like, I wasn't just fighting Pat Casey on 10 days notice. I was fighting Pat Casey with the 10 years of preparation I've had. And if that 10 years wasn't good enough to beat him, I shouldn't be in this sport. And that was kind of my mindset going into it. And so overall, like, I would say that 2023 was just a big, giant learning lesson that I was lucky enough to end on a high. You know, a couple of my teammates were like, well, here's the thing. You take this fight with Pat Casey, you end the year on a high, or you lose and you kind of go even lower. And I didn't see it like that. It was just, I get to test myself again, and no excuses if I had lost. Like, oh, it was 10 days notice. But, like, fuck it. I already lost. I'm already sad. I'm already upset and pissed off. If I lose again, I'll just be more sad and pissed off and take it out on the next guy.
Right.
Like I said, luckily enough, we ended on a high, and I just feel like I've learned so much this year. And I try to learn every year. But I feel like this year, unfortunately, was a lot more lessons learned, and it's just on me to use those lessons in the future.
For sure, man. You are gearing up for a big one to start the year, January 27th. Let's talk about your training camp a little bit. I know with the fight being in January, obviously you're now in camp through the holiday season. How has camp been for you? And is it easier for you now that you're fighting at 170? Maybe you can indulge a little bit more over the holidays versus having to cut super hard to 155.
It's great for the holidays. Italian family, my fiance's family is Irish and Italian, so we had the Italian food over there too. I've been eating good, and it really wasn't as much indulging until Christmas, but like just picking up the portion sizes. I'm eating bison, but I'm eating like half a pound of bison for lunch. I'm just doubling everything up, higher protein, higher intake of everything. And, the first couple weeks was just kind of bulking. I was eating junk food and then started cleaning it up. I indulged a little on Christmas. But it's really just being a true welterweight. And that was a big reason why when this fight, got offered, I was like, okay, this needs to be locked in soon. Because if I'm going to fight at 170, I'm not going to be that 55er that's just not cutting weight. I'm going to be a welterweight.
Right.
When I fought Pat Casey, I cut 7 pounds. When I fought Trevor Goody, I cut 6 pounds. And when I fight Lally, I'll probably cut 10 pounds. And everybody's going to say how easy of a weight cut it was. It's never an easy weight cut. They all suck. But I will be a true welterweight. You're not going to go in there and be like, wow, he's so much smaller. Granted, Lally's a big guy, but I don't think anybody's going to go in there and be like, wow, Joe looks so much smaller.
For sure. And I know typically your training camps usually consist of AKA, if you can get out to Cali, of course, BTT and Taunton. I've noticed that you're kind of mixing in New England Cartel into your camps as well. How has that relationship started, and how are things kind of going for you over there?
I've talked to Calvin for years. We've trained before, not like consistently, just here and there. And, after the Dufort loss, after I kind of got my stuff together and stopped feeling bad for myself, I kind of just sat down and opened up a notebook, and I was like, what are all the things that I did wrong, and what are all the things that I can do better? And the two biggest things that I would say, and it's my fault, but it's like, I don't think people understand, is like, people laugh and joke like I get heavy outside of my fight camps. The problem being, and this is why this will be my last fight at 170, is this entire year I have been offered fights at 55 and 70, and I've said yes to everybody. And then fights are unofficially official, all but announced, and then guys pull out.
Right.
Or they're official for 2 weeks, and then I'm prepping to go to California, and then they pull out. So I've had multiple fights this year where it's like, okay, you're fighting at 55. I'm like, all right, let me start getting my weight down. And then it's like, oh, so-and-so got hurt last week, so before they announced that fight's off. But we got this guy at 170. Right. All right, I'll fight this guy at 170. So now I'm bulking up to like 190 pounds. Oh, so-and-so can't. He's got work that night. It's like, okay, so now I'm just not fighting, but I'm 190 pounds, and I don't know when or what weight I'll be fighting at next. So now I'm 100, like the Dufort fight. I was 194 pounds when I took that fight 9 weeks out or 8 weeks out. And honestly, like, one of the biggest things I could have done better has been 175 pounds when I got that fight. But not knowing if I'm fighting at 55 or 70 is the problem. Is I don't want to be 170 and then fight in 4 weeks at 170. So I think the biggest lessons is just keeping my weight down after this, knowing I'm a 55er, and just making sure that I'm always improving. It's something that I focused on years ago, and I don't feel like I got lost at it, but I feel like it's hard for everybody around you because everybody wants to push you. Everybody wants you to, you keep going, push, which is great. But you also have to slow down, and you have to drill. You have to improve. And even for me, it's hard because I don't feel happy unless I'm crawling out of training. If my legs are still able to hold me up, I'm like, I didn't train hard enough. Right. But sometimes you got to train your mind. You got to be there and just getting better at certain techniques and movements. And that's something I'm really focusing on. And then just staying active competitively. I mean, realistically, when all these fights fell through this year, I had an 8-month gap or a 9-month gap from the Saul fight to the Dufort fight because, the Luigi fight didn't happen. I got sick. And that was another one that I thought I was fighting at 70, then Luigi at 55, cut too much, almost died. Whole big thing. But I just think it's one of those things where keeping my weight down, focus on improving, and when I can't get fights, doing more jiu-jitsu tournaments, just being active, being in that competitive mind state, I feel like will just help me improve that much more because I fucking hate losing.
No, of course.
So even a jiu-jitsu tournament, I'll walk out of there pissed off if some guy that trains 4 days a week taps me out.
Yeah, of course. I know like your main home is AKA. That's kind of where you travel out to Cali and you get to working over there with those guys. Do you have a time frame on when you're going to get out there next? Obviously not for this fight specifically, but is there like a time frame in mind where you'd like to get back out to Cali and get some work in?
It's tough because I always tell them I would love to go out there, not in fight camp, and just train for a month or a couple weeks, but that's just not in my financial budget.
Right.
My next fight camp for sure. Like I said, after this one, there's no other fight than me and Dufour. No other fight makes sense. And after this, I'm not going to insult myself and my team's hard work by staying at 190 pounds and fighting these fights at 170 that don't really make any sense. And that was something I've said to a few people. It's like, this fight really doesn't make sense, you know? It's a test for me, which I'm all about.
Right.
And a lot of other people are like, you don't need to test yourself. You've done so much. I like to compete. I like to test myself. And I love fighting. I love winning. But, you know, Lally hasn't been active. Lally's won 1 out of his last 4. But there are benefits. He's a Contender Series vet. You know, he's coming off of a win in his last one. So it's like I still do have positives from this fight, but it's definitely a lot more to lose than to gain. And a lot of people say that's dumb, but I'm just a competitor. I like to fight. I like to push myself, and this is just another opportunity to do that.
Of course, man. Let's get into that one then. Cage Titans 63 coming up January 27th at Plymouth Memorial Hall. You're taking on Sean Lally, who is 9-6 as a pro. You just mentioned coming off a win. He is also the standing Cage Titans middleweight champion. So going into this matchup, man, why was Lally the guy for the first fight of January 2024?
So Lally apparently had asked Cage Titans for the winner of me versus Pat Casey. And then, so that was the message I received. It was like, hey, Lally wants the winner of you guys, or wanted the winner. Obviously it's you. Like, so he wants you. And I, you know, my first response was like, that doesn't really do anything. Like, what else do we got? I got offered Nate Williams at 155 pounds. You know, he pulled out against me before. He's also won 1 out of his last 4, but he's coming off a loss. You know, so I was like, here are my options. I can fight a Contender Series vet and the 185-pound champ and not cut weight through Christmas, or I can fight a guy who also has only won 1 out of his last 4, but I have to cut to 55. He's never made it to the big show, and he's pulled out against me before. It was a tough decision in what's going to give me more, but when you put it all on paper, it's very clearly Lally is what gives me more. You know, the UFC has already flat out told me they want me fighting Contender Series level guys minimum, and Lally's that guy, you know. He didn't get a contract and get a big win on Contender Series, but he was there. So if Dana White thought that he earned an opportunity to fight there, then me beating him means that I'm fighting guys that Dana White was looking at.
Right. For sure, man. Makes 100% sense. Unfortunately, you know, maybe the options weren't there for what you technically wanted for your first one in 2024, but, you know, you got to go in there, stay active, and beat the guys that are in front of you. Looking at your opponent, Sean Lally, they call him the unpredictable one for a reason. You know, his game is pretty wild, very high energy first round. Looking at his style, how do you feel about the matchup for you overall?
I still feel like people are underestimating the fact that I love walking through fire. Like, people just don't realize. I think a lot of my fans nowadays haven't seen me fight as an amateur, where my footwork and my striking was terrible, and I would just eat a punch to land a punch. And that was it. Until I took people down and choked them out, I was eating punches to land punches. Not saying that's what I want to do at Lally. That's not a good plan.
Right.
But people are so concerned with him being unpredictable and, you know, the firefight, and it's like, I thrive in the fire. I don't fear it. I'm not worried about it. I respect it. I know he could put anybody away with one punch. But I feel like I carry all the same tools that he carries as far as being unpredictable. You know, he obviously has the power advantage, but I feel like I have every other advantage. I'm better on the feet. I'm better on the ground. I'm better in the transitions. And similar, I've said this a million times already, similar but opposite to Dufort. You know, you let him fight his fight, you're going to have a bad night. You know, if I'm letting him cut off the cage, back me up, not use my footwork, I'm going to have a bad night. But, you know, I think it's going to be a bull and a matador.
For sure. I mean, you mentioned kind of taking a punch to throw a punch in your amateur career. I think we saw that from you in the Jacob Bond fight. That one was definitely take a punch to land a punch,
for sure.
That was a hell of a war, and your head was looking a little different after that one.
A little bit.
So you definitely do like to go into those firefights if you have to. For sure.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't try to, but like, people don't really know the real me sometimes. Like, people always say, like, you look so calm when you're walking out, when you're fighting. And I'm like, that's great, because I'm scared shitless.
Yeah.
Like, I'm walking out and I'm like, why? I signed up for this. Like, nobody's forcing me to do this. What am I doing here? And then afterwards, I'm like, this is why. Like, win or lose, I'm like, I like to go out there and put it all out on the line. But also, people are always like, you're so technical, you're so flowy. And I'm like, you guys don't realize the urge that I fight every fight to just walk in the middle and stand and bang. I want it like, I don't know why. I got into a lot of fights growing up, and there's just this voice in my head that's like, just bite your mouthpiece and throw. Just stand right there, throw down. Max Holloway, point to the ground, just stand and bang. And I have to fight that voice in sparring. I have to fight that voice in fights all the time. And that voice is loud. Sure. So, you know, it kind of took over in the Bone fight. You know, I was feeling off that night, and I couldn't do what I wanted. And that voice was like, there's only one way, and it's through. And we stepped in and went through.
For sure, man. That was, you know, hell of a fight. I think that might have been the first fight I saw you fight live. So after that, I was like, Jesus.
This guy's out of his mind.
Yeah, there's a maniac. Hey, man, I appreciate you taking the time to come on and, you know, let me come over to your spot and interview you. Of course, I mean, we usually do this before fights every time. Figure we change it up for 2024, do something different. Speaking of 2024, I know you're a guy that likes to set goals. What are your goals for 2024? Maybe inside the cage, and then maybe if you have any like personal life goals for 2024.
In the cage, you know, I already told Cage Titans they got me for the first 5 cards of the year. So if you don't see me on a fight card this year, it's either because I got banged up in the previous fight or nobody would fight me. I'm getting married in November. So I told them you've got me from January to September. After that, I'm off limits till 2025.
Yeah, we can't have your face.
Yeah, no. But, you know, Shawnee gave me the green light. She's like, September is your cutoff, gives you plenty of time to heal up your face. But yeah, so 5 fights, 5 wins. That's the goal. Get my belt back. I'm cool with like 3 or 4 fights, you know, if the UFC comes calling sooner than that. But yeah, 5 fights, 5 wins, get my belt back. Those are my goals for inside the cage. And then outside of the cage is using my career to improve my life. You know, like I've said before, my losses are so frustrating because I don't mind losing. I should take that back. I hate losing, but it doesn't crush me. You know, I've wrestled. I sucked at wrestling. I lost a million times. I can get back up, pick myself up, and get back on the horse. The problem is what comes with a loss. You know, you're postponing your dreams. You're postponing that next step to the worldwide stage, and all the financial sacrifice and the sacrifice I make spending time with friends and family. That's what hurts. It's like I did all that and it almost feels like it's for nothing. So next year is to use this career for the opposite, is to make money, is to be, you know, financially stable, is to spend more time with friends and family while getting that world-class work in. And I think that we're on the right start in January.
There you go, man. Best of luck in January, man. I'll be there watching as always. Before I get you out of here, any people you want to thank, sponsors you need to shout out, you know, all that good stuff.
Everybody on the banner here, you guys help make this possible. Cagezin's right over there. 2 Fight Bros, Pear Tree, Verita Builders, Uncle Charlie's, a.k.a. Main Street, Big League Wash. You know, that's your boy. If you need your kitchen power washed, we got you. Yeah, everybody that helps out means more than you know. Buying shirts, buying tickets, you know, sponsoring me. It means the world to me and every other fighter. So go buy tickets, go buy T-shirts from your local fighters, sponsor your local fighters because this shit is not cheap. And make sure you vote for Cage Titans End of the Year Awards. This guy's got Podcast of the Year, or Media Outlet of the Year. I got a couple of nominations myself, so go vote for us. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys January 27th.
Yes, sir. JoJo, thanks for the time, man. Always appreciate a pleasure. I'll see you in January.
Anytime.
Got down for the count and he can't even talk now. This MMA, what we talking about? Yeah, you tuned into the pod now. Gonna be hard for you to stop now. Yeah, we caged in. Yeah, we caged in.